The following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFangy coming to what will hopefully be a quick and successful review, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Transformers action figure that is somewhat of an oldie but a oldie, and today we are going to be taking a look at Transformers Generation Selects Deluxe Class Autobot Hubcap. So, just like his original Generation 1 action figure, Hubcap here is a repaint and slight retool of an existing action figure of Cliffjumper. In this case, this version of Hubcap that was released in the Selects line is a repaint and retool of Earthrise Cliffjumper, who was released back in 2020. And by contemporary reckoning, Earthrise Cliffjumper this mold now holds the title of being one of the smallest deluxe class Transformers action figures to ever be created, and even with the inclusion of Cliffjumper's bazooka weapon, it doesn't add much to the size of the figure and what you pay for. So that's one of the reasons why, unlike the other Transformers Generation Selects action figures that were released back in 2020, it took me 3 years to add Hubcap to my collection, because as after owning Earthrise Cliffjumper and the money I paid out for other versions of the mold, such as Generation Selects Bugbite, Netflix Bumblebee, Buzzworthy Goldbug, Shattered Glass Goldbug, I just couldn't really find the need to add Hubcap to my collection for the prices that he was averagely going for on both Amazon and eBay. But I finally found a copy that I felt was going for a decent enough price. So without further delay, let's get Hubcap out of his box and take a close look at him in robot mode. Alright, and so here is Generation Selects Hubcap right out of the box. I have him holding his bazooka in the configuration that it's packaged in. And I'm surprised that he was packaged inside the box facing this direction, where he's parallel with the shorter length of the box. I thought they would have done it the other way like they've done with most Selects figures, but what are you going to do? So, so just a little brief rundown history on Hubcap here. He's always been a retool of Cliffjumper. Most iconic feature of Hubcap is that on his head sculpt, his face has always been painted red, and the head sculpt, I believe even on the Generation 1 figure, it did had those intake vents there on the opposite sides of his helmet. So it's nice that they were able to replicate the head sculpt from his original Generation 1 action figure here on the Selects figure. Somewhat similar to a Cliffjumper, his Autobot logo is not on... Hubcap's Autobot logo is not on his chest, just like his robot mode chest, just as unlike his Generation 1 action figure. But unlike Cliffjumper, where the Autobot logo ends up on the hood of his vehicle mode, which ends up storing inside of his back when he's in robot mode, Hubcap's Autobot logo is right down here on the side front of the hood, which means that it's on this is the right side foot. So that's a pretty nice distinction there to further distinguish Hubcap from Cliffjumper. Now, because Hubcap has always been a yellow version of Cliffjumper, this is one of the reasons why Hubcap is often overlooked, and why he's hasn't really been in the spotlight in any Transformers franchise, including Generation 1. So this is where we get a bit of history on Hubcap here. So, long story short, Cliffjumper was originally released in both red and yellow, already overlooking the fact that Generation 1 Bumblebee was also released in red and yellow colors as well. So by the time Hubcap was released as one of the 6 mini-bots for the third year of Transformers Generation 1 in the 1986 lineup of Transformers action figures, even though Hasbro successfully marketed Hubcap as being one of the 6 mini-bots, it's because Transformers collectors had already gotten in 1984 red and yellow versions of Cliffjumper and red and yellow versions of Bumblebee, Hubcap being a yellow version of Cliffjumper when there was already yellow Cliffjumper and also Bumblebee, who, despite not being the exact same mold in the Generation 1 line, he transformed and he had the same transformation, and the proportions of the vehicle modes were similar enough that Bumblebee and Cliffjumper kind of created an optical illusion where they weren't the same mold, but they might as well have been. So when Hubcap was released in 1986, unfortunately for Transformers Generation 1 collectors back then, he wasn't anything too special compared to the other mini-bots in the 1986 lineup, and as a result, And I'm certain as a result, because he's always looked so much like Generation 1 Bumblebee, Hubcap did not appear in the Transformers Generation 1 cartoon. And again, as I said a moment ago, Hasbro did successfully market Hubcap as being one of the 6 mini-bots for the 1986 lineup of Transformers action figures. So because he was successfully marketed alongside the other mini-bots, a lot of Transformers fans and collectors wondered why Hubcap never appeared in the cartoon show. And on that note, even though Hubcap didn't appear in the Generation 1 cartoon, a lot of Transformers fans and collectors have retroactively acknowledged a 1 second scene in the Transformers Generation 1 movie. So when a group of Autobots are about to be devoured by Unicron along with their human friend Spike Witwicky, behind Spike there's Bumblebee, and then behind Bumblebee there's Jazz and Cliffjumper, and then behind them there is a second Autobot who looks identical to Bumblebee on the conveyor belt that's leading to Unicron's digestive system. And because Hubcap has always looked so much like Bumblebee, a lot of Transformers fans and collectors have retroactively, um, unofficially declared that the Autobot look-alike to Bumblebee that's behind the group of Autobots that's inside Unicron, that was Hubcap, and that Hubcap didn't survive inside Unicron because only Spike, Wiki, Bumblebee, Jazz, and Cliffjumper were the only ones who escaped from Unicron's conveyor belt. So, a lot of Transformers and collectors have at least recognized that 1 second Bumblebee duplicate was in fact supposed to be Hubcap, even though Hubcap has a red face and Bumblebee has always had a yellow face on his robot mode head. And I'm one of the fans who has agrees that animated duplicate Bumblebee was in fact Hubcap. So yeah, because he's the Transformer who looks like Bumblebee, Hubcap has never been a significant character in the Transformers franchise. And even with the here on his Generation Selects action figure, we've got 2 versions of Bumblebee from this mold. 4 if you count Goldbug and Shattered Glass Goldbug as being upgraded versions of Bumblebee as well. So out of all the versions of the mold, Cliffjumper here is one of the most unique because he has one of the most unique paint jobs. So yeah, there's another size comparison with Cliffjumper, and again, this is one of the smallest Hubcap action figure. This mold is one of the smallest deluxe class figures here. Now on that note, as far as I'm aware of browsing around the Transformers Wikipedia, not counting repaints and re-releases, the Generation Selects figure is the most recent of, I believe, only 3 action figures that Hubcap has been officially given over the years. The other 2 previously released action figures of Hubcap that were released were the original Generation 1 Minibot in 1986, and then there was, of course, the live-action action figure of Hubcap that was released in the Transformers Hunt for the Decepticons line in 2010. So, for a special size comparison with the only other action figure of Hubcap that I had in my Transformers collection until I got the Selects figure a few weeks ago, here is Transformers Hunt for the Decepticons Hubcap. Again, this is the live-action movie version of Hubcap. And unfortunately, even though these 2 action figures are the same size, this is the Hunt for the Decepticons version of Hubcap here is a now defunct size class of Transformer that was known as the Basic or Scout class size Transformers. They were in between the size of Deluxe and Legends class Transformers here, so comparing Generation Selects Hubcap with Hunt for the Decepticons Hubcap, this is just another one of many numerous examples of how Hasbro and Takara have been increasingly making Transformers action figures smaller in more recent years. But yeah, it's nice to finally have an actual proper Generation 1 action figure of Hubcap I have in my Transformers collection. And what I mean by actual proper figure of Hubcap is, again, I apologize if I'm repeating myself. But for one last size comparison with an action figure Bumblebee, this is the repaint of the Generations Thrilling 30 Legends class Bumblebee figure that was released in the Toys R Us exclusive subline of, can't remember what the line was called, it was in the Age of Extinction line, and there were 2 packs of Transformers characters that had an action figure representing them from the live-action movies and Generation 1, and I've been using this action figure Bumblebee ever since I got it as my unofficial Legends class-sized Hubcap action figure. Were times in the past where I considered painting over the silver on the face of this figure red to make it look more like Generation 1 Hubcap. But again, because Hubcap is the Autobot Bumblebee cosplayer, or one could joke about Hubcap app. There's a few handful action figures of Bumblebee that can double as Hubcap if you desire. But yeah, unfortunately, because of Bumblebee's claim to fame and Hubcap having the same paint job, he's one of the less popular Transformers characters. But from the number of views I've seen of the Generation Selects action figure, it's one that's worth at least adding to your Transformers collection if you can find it for the right price. So if you have Earthrise Cliffjumper, the articulation on Hubcap is the exact same. The only retool part on Hubcap is his head sculpt. It is fairly accurate to the new head sculpt that was given to his Generation 1 Minibot. Right out of the box, the ball joint at the neck is, or swivel joint, I should say, at the neck is very tight, so I'm not going to try and turn it. The shoulders are on swivel joints, so they can rotate forwards and backwards 360 degrees. Right out of the box, some of the joints are a little tight. Hopefully they'll loosen up just a little bit with time. Swivel joint in the bicep, hinged elbows, swivel joints in the wrists, and that's because you can rotate the hands 360 degrees to get the backpack, which becomes the back section of the vehicle mode, to lock in place more properly. Swivel joint at the waist, so the upper half of the body can spin 360 degrees left and right. Universal jointed hips, so the legs can go inward and outward that far. The legs can go out that far, so you can get a full split with the action figure if you want. The leg can kick forward that far, it can kick backwards this far, which is pretty nice range of articulation there. Hinge joint in the knee, you have a sole joint in the thigh, which I showed off earlier, and then unfortunately you don't have too much of an ankle. The foot can't move up and down independently of the lower leg, but you do have ankle rockers, so you can get Hubcap into a sprawl-legged pose if you wanted to get him into a more sniper position if you want. And of course he does come with the exact same bazooka that came with Earthrise Cliffjumper. The main difference is that the parts on Cliffjumper's bazooka that are silver paint, they're now dark gray paint here on Hubcap. Unfortunately, it's not dark gray plastic, it is paint. I believe every version of the bazooka, except the ones that came with Goldbug, it's all paint instead of actual plastic. And on that note, half of Hubcap's parts I'm noticing are yellow paint instead of yellow plastic. Parts of him that are yellow paint are right here. These shoulder pylons that his wheels are connected to, that's paint. The top of the robot mode shoulders, that's yellow paint. And I'm trying to see if there's what other parts are yellow paint. I believe I can't tell, but I think the backpack/back window section is paint. The 5mm ports here that connect to it in vehicle mode are yellow plastic. I believe the robot mode chest, Hubcap's head sculpt, the lower arms, and the robot mode feet, that's all yellow plastic. So, and then I just said the robot mode chest. No, that's not yellow plastic, that's yellow paint. But yes, half of Hubcap's parts that are yellow, half of them are paint, and the other half are plastic. So it kind of mind boggles me why Hasbro and Takara didn't just go the extra mile and make all of Hubcap's parts that are that it would make more sense for them to be made out of yellow plastic. Why they didn't just do that instead of making the parts black plastic and then painting them over with yellow paint. And I'm looking at Earthrise Cliffjumper, and they kind of did the same thing. Same thing, such as in the robot mode, the top of the robot mode shoulders, where it's red paint on Cliffjumper. But anyways, that's just my own personal OCD about paint versus plastic on parts of Transformers action figures that are supposed to be the exact same color. But the video's gone on longer than I wanted it to, so without further delay, let's get Hubcap transformed into his alternate mode, and we'll wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Hubcap transformed into his alternate mode. Again, as I said, just like with robot mode, he's basically just a yellow version of Cliffjumper, and because we also got this action figure as Bumblebee, unfortunately, for me personally, I don't think Hubcap is ever going to escape the fact that he's an Autobot who ended up being a Bumblebee cosplayer. So, depending on which character if you enjoy Bumblebee more often than other Transformers characters, or if you think Bumblebee's overrated, then not directly with Hubcap himself, but you might find yourself criticizing Bumblebee for being the reason Hubcap hasn't been in the spotlight too long or hardly ever at all. Again, there's his one Autobot logo there on the off-center of his hood. He does have some decent paint jobs. The front grille's painted black. You got the emergency lights painted dark gray under there, and then of course you've got the undercarriage there. Yeah, the headlights themselves aren't painted, but I don't think any version of this mold has painted headlights. I've been a while since I looked at them. Maybe Shatterglass Goldbug has, I don't know. One nice thing is that just like his Generation 1 action figure, he has the same colored windows as Cliffjumper, so the back window being black paint, and it blends in more successfully with the dark gray tinted windows here on Hubcap than it does if it was a lighter shade of clear plastic used on the other windows. Again, the taillights aren't painted, but the back bumper and the place where the exhaust pipes are located is painted. And it's nice to see that here with Hubcap. The only exposed part in robot mode are the hands that are down right here, but it's easy to overlook. And I really enjoy that. So, for some size comparisons, here he is one last time with Earthrise Cliffjumper. Again, they're just like their Generation 1 action figures, where Cliffjumper was released first and Hubcap was released after, so... Oh, it's really thrilled. Again, this is one of only 2 action figures of Hubcap that I have in my Transformers collection, so I'm just really thrilled to finally have the Generation Selects figure here. Here's Cliffjumper with his bazooka on his roof. You can attach the bazooka to Hubcap's roof if you want for weapon storage. Again, I have the bazooka. I haven't messed with it yet. It's still in the same configuration it was inside the box. But if you want to further differentiate Hubcap and Cliffjumper from each other, you can have the bazookas hanging out on Cliffjumper's roof and have Hubcap without it. So that's another nice feature to have. And again, here he is with the Generations Legends Class Bumblebee figure. I've used this as my Legends Class Hubcap figure here because there are a handful of Bumblebee action figures that you can use as Hubcap if you desire to have more action figures of him in your collection. And again, and for one last size comparison, here is Generation Selects Hubcap with Transformers Hunt for the Decepticons Hubcap. This is him from the Generation 1 series, and this is him from the live-action films, which he never appeared in. And this is one of the reasons why I got the Hunt for the Decepticons Hubcap figure when it was released back in 2010. It's the vehicle mode is a red late 1940s / early 1950s style hot rod type muscle car. And again, these two, I believe, are 2 of only 3 official action figures of Hubcap that have been released by Hasbro. The only other one that I do not have is the original Generation 1 version that was released back in 1986. And again, even though this figure is a now defunct size class known as Scout Class, which is a size smaller than Deluxe's, with Transformers action figures getting downsized in recent years and the Earthrise Cliffjumper mold being one of the smallest deluxe figures ever made, it's really mind-boggling for me personally to see that both the Movieverse Hubcap and the Generation Selects G1 Hubcap action figures are the same size. They're not the same weight. This figure is much lighter than this one. This one has a lot more heft to it than this figure does. But it's really nice to see them there. See them standing side by side with each other. So to end the video with the proverbial question, do I recommend getting Generation Selects Hubcap and adding him to your Transformers collection? Absolutely. Even if you already have Earthrise Cliffjumper and you have all the other versions of this mold, which I apologize for not bringing out, Netflix Bumblebee, Selects Bug Bite, Buzzworthy Goldbug, Shatterglass Goldbug, I do highly recommend you get Hubcap and adding him to your Transformers collection. The only version of this mold that I do not suggest getting and adding to your collection is the Buzzworthy Bumblebee figure that came in the Worlds Collide 4-pack. That one's an easy pass because, again, why get that mold when you can get Hubcap and have a different character and not just another version of Bumblebee? But again, that's always been Hubcap's downfall, is that being a yellow repaint of Cliffjumper, he's always been doomed to be the Bumblebee doppelganger, for lack of better vocabulary, so he's always been overlooked in the Transformers franchise, but who knows, maybe one day Hubcap will get a chance to shine and become a more popular Transformers character than he's been struggling to try and become since 1986. Thank you guys all so much. This has been the TFN Geek, and it's next time, you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and it's next time, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.